Meeting for the Village Council of Royal Palm Beach, to our council chambers out of the rain. And it's Thursday, August 20th, 2026. It is 6:30 p.m. Appreciate everybody being here. And for those who are able, would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Madam Clerk, please let the record show that all members of the council are present.
Yes, Mayor, I will.
And with that, we'll move right into one of our special guests this evening, who brings insight that is unique and important to us at this particular time. Mrs. Dorothy Jacks is here this evening. She is our Palm Beach County property appraiser. She's been doing this for a while, I think, and she's pretty darn good at it. And the "it" is something that can be really confusing, and so she is probably one of the best explainers that I know in the business, quite frankly. So every time she appears at any events, I know I'm going to walk away with more information and better understanding. So without further ado, let me welcome Mrs. Jacks. Thank you for showing up this evening.
Thank you so much. You can hear me? Yes. Okay. It's a pleasure to be with you. It's actually my first time in your beautiful Village Hall, and it's what a great space. Really fantastic.
Thank you.
I think you're doing such a good job in Royal Palm. I live just east of here in Riverwalk, so I'm just inside West Palm Beach's boundary, not quite into Royal Palm, but I really more often drive west than I do east. So I enjoy so many things out both in Royal Palm and in Wellington. So glad you're here. And I'm happy to be here tonight. I'd like to give you a short presentation about property values in Royal Palm Beach, and then talk a little bit about Amendment 3 on the ballot in November. So if I can get started, I begin with the, is it going to come up on the what we call by the numbers, which is the high-level numbers for the village, starting with your market value for 2026, which is just ever so slightly under $8 billion, taxable value of $5 billion. I'll be explaining the difference between those two numbers in just a minute. Your net new construction this year was $158 million. That was a great increase. In 2025, your net new construction was just $60 million. So a nice delivery of new value. New construction is added the year after it is completed. So when projects are in the process, when we see them CO'd, essentially, we add them for the next year. It also includes a deletion line, which means that if something, say, burned down or was torn down, it would be deducted from the same number. So it's a way to reflect what is new to the tax roll. The percent increase in value from last year to this, 8.3. You have 14,000 parcels, which is 842, ever so slightly over last year's number, which was 14,739. Parcel counts don't increase a lot unless you have a subdivision that breaks, say, from one big parcel into multiple smaller parcels. That's usually the way parcels are added. The other way would be if you had a condominium added, even if it was it doesn't have to be a tower. When we think about it, there's a lot of condominiums that are simply communities, and that is each parcel is a new parcel in your parcel count in a condominium, not an apartment building, because an apartment building is one owner, one tax bill, one parcel. Okay. And tangible accounts are tangible personal property, so that's business equipment. So those are both your small and large businesses, Publix, anybody who's any small store, anybody who's a business would be a tangible account. And that number went up ever so slightly. It went from 1,048 to 1,080. Tangible accounts ebb and flow because, of course, businesses open and close, so you usually get a sort of even number each year. All right, moving on. Here we have the assessment differential, which shows you how we get from that $7.9 billion market value down to the taxable value. It's on 2 pages. First, you see that Save Our Homes differential. What that is the 3% cap on homesteaded property is also known as Save Our Homes, and that differential is the amount that is lost to the town because of Save Our Homes. Then you have the 10% cap. We're going to talk about that when we get to the Amendment 3. The 10% cap is on all non-homesteaded property, so any kind of business, vacant land, second homes, rental properties have a 10% cap today. It's being contemplated to move to 5%. Then you have agricultural classification, pollution control devices, and we get down to $6.2 billion. And in our next slide, we show the exemption reduction. So these are the actual 25 and the additional 25, the 50,000 current homestead, how much it reduces the value. And then you all, thank you very much, have the limited income senior exemption in Royal Palm Beach. Not every city provides that, so that's wonderful that Royal Palm does. That has a small reduction. The tangible have a homestead of sorts. They have a $25,000 exemption. What that means is if you're, say, a hair salon, you probably don't have a lot of furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and you would probably not pay the tangible tax. But anybody who has over $25,000 of tangible property pays that tax. Government is, of course, the building we're standing in, your civic center, the fire stations, schools, your school, all of that is in government. Institutional is all other churches, charitable organizations, that type thing. And then we have the other exemptions, which are the specialized personal exemptions: seniors, widows, widowers, disabilities, veterans are in there, disabled veterans, and so forth. And that gets us down to the $5.3 billion. So that's the difference between those two numbers. I always think it's interesting just to review where the value is being reduced. All right, so we'll go on. The 2026 Property Tax Amendment, also known as Amendment 3 now. At the moment, Amendment 3 has been rewritten, the actual ballot language, and is now back in the hands of the judge who is reviewing the language. And once that judge approves the language, hopefully in the very near future, we will have final ballot language that will give us an idea of what the voters will see on November 3rd. The main 4 or 5 items on the it's 4 items that will be on the ballot will be an increase of the homestead exemption, again now $50,000. It would go up to $150,000 in 2027, so next year. The following year, it would go to $250,000. And then after that could be indexed to inflation beginning in 2029. The first $25,000 of both of those amounts applies to all taxing authorities, including the school board, the remaining to the non-school levies. However, everything above that, owners would pay, homeowners, homesteaders, would pay for the school board. So it is not a tax elimination. Even if your value is below $250,000, you will pay a property tax to the school board. Then new residents who have not yet arrived in Florida, who will arrive after January 1st, would not be eligible for the higher amounts. They instead would have 5 years at the amount we have today, the $50,000 we have today. They would have a homestead, but they would only have the $50,000 exemption that we have today. After 5 years, they would then be eligible for the higher amounts. And I mentioned earlier the 10% cap would be lowered to 5%. So people who are not receiving the current homestead or not homesteaders here, maybe they're a business owner or a renter, the landlord, not the residents, but the landlord would see their cap go down from 10% to 5%. That could or couldn't benefit them. It all just depends on how much their value moves each year. If your value doesn't move the 5%, then you just pay on the 5%. If it moves more than 5%, you'd be capped at 5%, rather like you are with the 3% cap today on homesteaded property. Of course, that cap does not apply to the school board millage either. So regardless of how much your value goes up, if you're not homesteaded, your value goes up to the market for your school board millage levy, which is the highest millage levy on our list of levies that we pay in Palm Beach County. It's around 6 mills that we all pay to the school board. 3 mills stay local, 3 mills go to the state of Florida. Okay. I have broken down here for you that in Royal Palm Beach what the homestead numbers look like. So of the 14,000 parcels, these are based, by the way, on the 25 numbers. 14,000 parcels, 13,800 are residential. Of those 13,800, 10,000 are homesteaded. Today, in 2025, well, this was last year, in 2025, 130 of your residents do not currently pay property tax to the Village of Wellington because they are under the $50,000 value. That's probably because they've lived there forever, and they may be also in a smaller home. Second column shows us what that number goes to when the value goes in what would be contemplated the first year, 2027, of 150,000 homestead exemption, 2,000 of your residents, 2,000 of the 10,000 homesteaders would now not pay property tax to Wellington or to all districts except this. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. It's the rain. It's getting to me. Did I do that more than once? I'm sorry. Royal Palm.
It's okay.
My apologies. I know where I am. I really do. I've been doing a lot of these. Like you said.
I know you have. Not a problem.
It's good I'm calling you by your neighbor, not by, Tequesta or something on the complete other side of the county. Again, my apologies. All right, so 2,000 of your 10,000 Royal Palm Beach homesteaders would not pay property tax to Royal Palm Beach or the county or many other districts. They would still pay the school board. And when you go to 2028, 5,600 of the 10,000 residents of Royal Palm Beach would not pay property tax to Royal Palm Beach. Now, all of that assumes that values would remain static, which they won't. Values will move. It also assumes that your millage rate would remain static, which it may not, and that would change these numbers slightly. But I do think it's important that you see this sort of impact of the amendment on your tax base. So let's look a little bit more at that. These numbers you may have seen already. I know your city manager is very involved and has probably shared some of this information with you, but your tax levy in 2025, $9 million collected or levied. The exemption revenue loss today, about $1 million. It goes to $2.7 million and $3.9 million. And at $250,000, the loss as a percent of the total taxes levied, again, based on 2025, is 41%. Finally, just an overview of the amendment. It goes before the voters on November 3rd. It must pass by 60%. Taxpayers would not need to reapply for the homestead exemption. Our office would simply make the changes, the value changes. The more significant thing for our office will be the confusion around, am I a resident or am I not a resident by the end of 2026? But it would be effective again, right around the corner, January 1, 2027. And thank you, and be more than happy to answer any questions you have about this subject or any other subject.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. Does the council have any comments or questions? Councilwoman Samuels.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jacks, for coming in. I appreciate it, and the thorough explanation of that as well. So I have two questions for you, and you've kind of touched on each of them a little bit, but one of them was, how are property values determined? Because that's one thing that is a concern is, wait a minute, why is, I purchased my house at this price, but my neighbor came in a couple years later and theirs is valued so much more. And then you did go through some of the exemptions that are available to the residents. Do you find that there's any that we are not taking advantage of, or that some of our residents could then make sure that they apply for those as well?
Yeah, great questions. The first one is, Florida has a annual property assessment state. What that means is that every year our office is looking at market data about comparable properties to your home to make a decision as to how we are going to value your home. So how that looks is, in a very high level stance would be, say you're in a community of 200 like homes, and last year there were 10 sales in that community. What do those 10 sales tell us about that community? Should we be raising the value? Should we be lowering the value? Or quite often, should we leave the value where it is? Now, of course, that starts to change when you get into homes that are all very different, like you have many communities in Royal Palm like that. And then it becomes much more breaking it down to a square footage level. Also, age can come into play, your location certainly, the land value is valued separately from the building. But all of this data is really market driven. So what are your neighbors paying for properties that are like yours will drive what we set your value at. Now, first, we do the market value. That's probably the most important thing that my office does, and probably talked about the least. But it's the most. We are doing that every year for all properties in Palm Beach County, looking at them statistically to make sure that they are within a range of acceptance of value based on comparable sales, comparable transactions. Commercial is done a little differently. New buildings are done a little differently, but that's the sort of long and short of residential value. Now, after that, what we have are the caps playing in. So first, do you have a homestead exemption? Does your neighbor have a homestead exemption? If your neighbor doesn't have a homestead exemption, well, automatically, because of your homestead exemption, you will pay less tax than your neighbor because they are not receiving the really nice current benefits of homestead. Second, if you have lived there, if you and your neighbor both have a homestead, then we would look, why they would be different is how long you've each had that homestead. The longer you have been in a home, the more chance that you are getting benefit of the 3% cap, which is annual. So you only get it if you're homesteaded, and it's clicking up only 3% a year. So possibly your neighbor who bought later bought at a higher value, and they do not have the benefit of just that little click up every year. When you sell your home, your benefits leave with you. So your homestead goes away, your cap benefit goes away. New buyer comes in, they're going to buy at that higher market value that we have been following the whole time. So that's how you get this very great difference between neighbors. It's why is my neighbor paying less than me? Chances are they got there before you. Just simply mechanics of the cap. The other thing is portability. So if you've had a homestead for a long time anywhere in Florida, you have built up some cap savings by that cap keeping your value you pay tax on lower and your market continuing to rise. That, what we call differential between those two numbers, your market and your capped, you can carry or port to another property. So you might have a neighbor who came after you, but they came from somewhere and brought their portability with them. And it's as if that gets applied to their home, and it's as if they've had homestead there forever. It reduces their value. So that can be another reason why two homes will not be the same. It's unfortunate that it's sort of become this, we have to get very, very granular with each property to tell you what's going on. But that's what we're here for, and we're happy to explain it to anybody that calls us or comes in to see us. We have a wonderful office right here in Royal Palm, right across the road here in the government building, the county government building. Very quiet, nice office if you ever want to come in. But that's what we spend a lot of time doing, is just explaining why are they different. Now, your second question, tell me again.
what are some of the tax exemptions or discounts that
Yes.
we didn't discuss that are possibly available?
Thank you. I think that's a great question because there is one that only 2 of our cities have adopted, and we call it affectionately the super senior. What it is if you have lived in your home for 25 years or longer and your value is $250,000 or lower, you can receive another kind of big homestead exemption. I believe it's $100,000, or you may be allowed to set it. That is a local option benefit, rather like the senior is, that you already have. And honestly, it can be a really nice savings to those that qualify in each city. And Delray has it. Boynton has it. And just to give you some numbers, because I think it sounds a little scary, like, wow, that's going to be a lot of money. But for instance, in Boynton, I think there's 49 people that qualify. So we're not talking thousands of people, but those people get this very nice local option benefit. And certainly, Rain can get in touch with us and we can give him more information about it. But that is the one thing that is local option that we have not seen a lot of usage in Palm Beach County.
And for clarification then, that is the longevity in the home, not age of the homeowner.
It's both, actually.
is,
I'm
okay.
sorry. I hope I probably
No,
didn't.
that's okay.
But it is. It's for seniors, so 65 and older.
Gotcha, that's.
But it's the length of time in the home that makes it a super senior. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor? We're taking notes.
Okay, yeah, I am taking notes. Thank you so much for your explanation. That's great. 2 things. I've noticed that there are some homes, say 3 years ago, that were sold for, say, $180,000 that are now selling for $500,000.
Wow.
So in your evaluation, how did that play in, and do you see that continuing? And then secondly, I know that we had an influx of people. Do you still see that happening, of new residents in Palm Beach County?
Yeah, so we did have, especially at the end of COVID and then post-COVID, we had a really big spike in the residential market, just a lot of movement in the market. That seems to have slowed down somewhat, although the prices have not yet, and I'm not sure they will, return to sort of pre-COVID pricing. We're not seeing that price point dropping significantly. We're seeing it drop a little. Let me say that. We're seeing it drop a little. The influx of people, I think what you have going for you is you provide a nice community at a reasonable price. And I think it just attracts people. I think that's what the problem, that's beautiful, wonderful. But the problem with it is these people who are coming may have more resources because, say, they've sold their home up north for some significant amount of money. And for them, saying, well, that $500,000 sticker is too much for me. I'll give you $400,000. Isn't happening. They're simply saying, yeah, I've got $500,000, so I'll pay $500,000. It's kind of this blessing and a curse. You've got an affordable community here, and a lot of really nice things to offer, and it attracts homeowners, but it will drive prices and thus drive values.
Okay. Any other questions? I have one. I don't think you mentioned a trim notice. Would you talk a little bit about that, please?
Thank you. It's been a long day. No, so today we mailed the 2026 proposed tax notice. We also call it the trim notice, affectionately, truth and millage. And of course, that details for everybody, all owners, the value that we've set on their property this year. It tells them their exemptions or benefits that have been applied. And then it also gives them their proposed taxes, which includes Royal Palms, a millage, and then it calculates out the proposed taxes. So everyone has the first look at what their value and what their taxes may be this year come November. I know you'll be having your meetings over the next month or so to solidify your millage. And then that will move forward back to us and then to the collector for collection in November 1st. The other thing it does, the mailing of the proposed notice, is it begins the 25 days that taxpayers have to file an appeal on their value. So that's very important because that window these days, not everybody opens their mail on the day they get it, and 25 days goes very quickly. So we always encourage people, if they have any questions about their value, to give us a call right away.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you, I appreciate that. So we had the opportunity to attend the Florida League of Cities annual conference last week. Obviously, Amendment 3 was a topic of many, many breakout sessions and a couple of general sessions as well. Something that was mentioned that I'd heard about once before, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, was something called the Taxation and Budget Review Commission. Could you speak to that?
In 2 years, a 20-year commission will occur, meaning it only comes together every 20 years in the state of Florida, called the Taxation and Budget Commission. It will be appointed by, I believe, most of the seats by the governor, but there are some seats, I think, appointed by legislators. And that commission is charged with looking at the entirety of the tax system in Florida. So they're not just looking at property taxes, they're looking at sales tax, they're looking at all types of tax to see whether Florida is doing the best they can with tax issues. Certainly, if Amendment 3 does not pass in November, or even if it does pass in November, I'm sure the topic around property tax will be a big one for this commission in this coming 2 years. It's a good process because there's a lot of public input. There's a lot of opportunities for residents to communicate with the commission about what they think works and what they don't. There's also a great deal of financial disclosure around, well, if we were to do this, this would be the impact. And some of those things are not what happened with Amendment 3, which I think is why, for many of us, it's sort of quite a shocking thing coming very quickly and with little sort of analysis into the financial pros and cons of it. So I'm hopeful that sort of more studied approach to the whole entire tax system in Florida will be helpful to all of us, that we'll all be able to have input into it.
And you said that will convene in 2 years?
Yes, I believe it's a 2028.
Oh, okay.
But of course, next year we'll begin a lot of the planning for it. Yeah.
So that sounds very attractive, actually. So, Councilwoman Rodowski?
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all this information. While we have some residents who are very excited about this, can you share from your perspective the downside of what could happen with this amendment?
Well, I think that, of course, in my role as the property appraiser, I am simply handed things to do. If the law changes, we will implement what the law tells us to do on January 1st. I think the concern about this is further skewing the homestead system. I also think it's hard for people, especially young people, who are trying to buy homes in Florida. I think it's every parent's dream that their kids would be able to buy a home here, and they won't be eligible for these benefits, and potentially it could drive values into an even worse place with this sort of complacency of, well, I have a homestead, my taxes aren't bad. What am I worried about though? I don't know. There's a sort of piece to this where it's helping me, but is it really helping everybody? And then, of course, I am very concerned for what you will have to do as a board to find ways to cut what has to be cut in order to make your budgets work, or raise your taxes, which, people don't remember that. It's even in its best moment, it's a $250,000 exemption. So anyone who has a home worth $500,000 isn't escaping paying tax on that other $250,000. And if tax rates go up, well, they go up on that other $250,000. So you have people who may not realize that the downside to everybody getting this break, and it's not everybody, it's just the homesteaders getting this break, is that the tax rate may go up for us all on any other value. As soon as your value gets above $250,000, you'll pay tax on that, and you may pay it at a higher rate. And so just remembering that, and remembering that hard decisions will have to be made about what cities and the county can continue to afford. And I think that's tough to see, especially when local government is really everyone's favorite government. I think that a lot. I think about that, I've come out and enjoyed your green market on in the winter, and you have security, you have cleanups, all of that has to be paid for. It's not free, and things like that it's sad to think that they might not be there. Those sorts of events. I know in my city, in West Palm Beach, there's a lot of activities downtown in the evening. All of that it has to be paid for. And, it's sad to think that at that local level where we like government the most, we might lose some of it.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Yeah, I had a question on the 5-year waiting period. Is that, obviously, out-of-staters don't have a homestead, they're not here, so but residents that don't have a homestead, they would qualify for it, won't they?
Well,
Or do you have to be a homeowner before January 1st?
great question that we really don't have a conclusive answer to yet. It is, the two terms are used interchangeably, resident and homesteader. In a lot of the law that we've seen, well, a lot, there's only been a tiny little bit of it so far that we've seen. I would hope that the legislators, when they are, if they get to where they're going to have to do enabling legislation, will think of a resident as not somebody who's homesteaded, but as somebody who has lived here and can show their Florida driver's license, they've had it for 5 years, such as people's kids, such as a renter who is trying to buy a home. I mean, that's what we all hope that it will come out at. But for me, I can't tell you today that that's absolutely for certain, because the law is very careful to say that you will receive homestead and then you will get your $50,000, only $50,000 for those 5 years. So you must have the homestead for those 5 years. It's just prior to that, what does that mean? What does that break mean? So I'm hopeful it will be for renters and kids and people who have been Florida residents, but we wait to see.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, not seeing any. I want to thank you, but I think you've demonstrated the complexity of what we try to understand and really need to understand. For many years, I think when we first moved down here, we just kind of accepted the tax as the tax, and that was part of the cost of living here. And now as we see something changing very dramatically, beginning to understand better and better, and yet that requires understanding a lot of details and how they interact with one another and how different, while our neighbor might look the same, their situation is from our situation. All of that is what makes up the reality of property taxes. And so I thank you very much for sharing that with us and for coming all the way out here. And you're welcome out here. By the way, Friday night, we do have a back-to-school night over at Commons Park, so if you haven't been at an event over there, come on out.
Thank you.
All right.
And thank you so much for being here and providing such a great community. I have many, many staff who live in Royal Palm Beach, so we're big fans. So thank you again.
Great. Thank you. Okay, next agenda item is a proclamation recognizing September 2026 as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And that subject is very close to a lot of us, and it is one of those things that affects individuals and families beyond description, and it is something that just raising the awareness of it is something worthwhile doing. Veteran suicide, being a veteran myself, I paid close attention to this. About 5 years ago, it was about 22 veterans a day committing suicide. We are down to 17.5, and it is still too many, way too many. We are certainly not the only group of veterans that has to deal with mental health issues, and the fact that we have a 211 in Palm Beach County that provides access to mental health assistance is particularly important. So I've asked our Vice Mayor to go ahead and read this proclamation. She has a particular connection. And we have a young lady from 211 here this evening. Her name is Kaylee Newby. And so while it's being read, Kaylee and I will be standing down in front, and I'll share the actual proclamation with her at that time. So, Madam Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Newby. As the mayor stated, this is extremely dear and close to my heart. Due to domestic violence and the loss of my son, I myself attempted to commit suicide twice in my lifetime. Just because somebody's smiling doesn't mean they're happy. So this is very, very dear to me. Proclamation recognizing September 2026 as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Whereas suicide remains a significant public health concern that affects individuals, families, schools, workplaces, and communities across our nation and throughout Florida. And whereas every conversation has the power to change a life, and increasing awareness, reducing stigma, and encouraging people to seek help are essential to preventing suicide and promoting mental wellness. And whereas last year alone, the compassionate and highly trained specialists of 211 Palm Beach and Treasure Coast responded to more than 125,000 requests for help across Palm Beach, Martin, St. Lucie, Indian River, and Okeechobee counties, including more than 50,000 individuals seeking help for mental health or substance use challenges, and more than 6,000 for suicide-related crises. And whereas many people in our community continue to face challenges, including anxiety, depression, isolation, financial hardship, housing instability, and other challenges that can impact emotional well-being and increase the need for timely support. And whereas beyond responding to moments of crisis, 211 connects individuals and families to critical communities and resources, including mental health care, food assistance, housing support, health care, child development services, special needs resources, services for veterans, support for older adults and caregivers, and many other programs that strengthen lives and build resilient communities. And whereas 211 Palm Beach and Treasure Coast operates the 211 helpline and serves as the region's provider for the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, offering free confidential support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, by phone, text, and online chat, ensuring that no one has to face a crisis alone. And whereas Suicide Prevention Awareness Month is an opportunity for all residents to learn the warning signs of suicide, check in on friends, family, neighbors, and coworkers, encourage help seeking, and remind every person that hope and help are always available. Now, therefore, I, Vice Mayor Sharps, and Mayor Jeff Hamera, proclaim on behalf of the Village of Royal Palm Beach, September 2026 as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and witness whereof I hereto set my hand, per the mayor, on this 20th day of August, 2026.
Thank you for what you guys do. It is really, really much appreciated and very, very important. It really is. So thank you. And so we'll do the best we can to get the word out, and that's for you to take back to 211. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so next on the agenda is our reports. And this evening, if I can find mine, I'm going to change the order of things a little bit. I'm going to start off this evening with the mayor's report, my report. So I want to begin by saying you can't help but notice the school year has begun. Please drive safely. Please be patient, especially around the schools. We've come to learn through experience that it takes about 2 weeks for parents and everyone else to get used to what the routine is, especially new parents at new schools. And so there's going to be some traffic around the school, so we ask that you all be patient with that and be very careful around the schools. We welcome everybody back, the parents, the teachers, the principals, school employees. Our 6 schools is a large part of what makes Royal Palm Beach such a special place to live. We are very fortunate to have an education advisory board that's very active and very engaged. Been in place for quite a few years, works with all 6 of our schools in a variety of ways. The second week in August, we actually had our organization meeting for our education advisory board. 6 volunteers, 5 are regular seats, and then 1 alternate. And so their first action is to elect a new chair for the coming year. And this year, Paula Wilson, who's been on the council for quite a while, in fact, if she'd been a chair once before, was asked if she would serve again, and she said she would. And one of the things that the chair gets to do is to pick a chair's initiative, some particular focus area that she would like to see each of the schools to focus on in one way or another, perhaps the school district as well. But this year, she suggested that during our showcases that we hold, the second Monday of every month during the school year, we invite one school to a showcase, bring their school, their curriculum, what they're doing, what's new, what's going on, and usually they bring the kids, which is how we fill this room. By the way, thank you all for being here tonight. I really appreciate that, and hopefully you've already gained some insight into the important matters that actually contribute to our budget. But back to the topic of schools again. So our Education Advisory Board, every second Monday of every month, actually showcases one school. So each year, the principal gets up, usually talks, and the teachers get up, talk. The best part is when the kids get up and talk about what's going on in their schools. And sometimes they perform. This year, the chair's initiative is to invite at least one pair of parents or one parent to come and speak about their experience at that school as well. And so we think that's going to bring an interesting perspective and maybe encourage the engagement of the parents, not only in their kids' activities, but also in a larger sense in their schools. And so looking forward to that. She also suggested that we establish an agenda item called Community Partners. That would be an opportunity for any of the businesses, any of the organizations like Rotary Club, or any other organizations in the community that partner with the schools, that support the schools in any way, to come and talk about what they do. And so I think this agenda, the agenda that will be coming up for each meeting, will be an exciting one. It will be very interesting, and it will certainly add a new perspective. So I don't know about you all, but traffic is terrible as far as I'm concerned. Actually, if you haven't experienced it, try 7:30 in the morning in front of Royal Palm Beach High School. And Okeechobee Boulevard is tough, but there are a lot of intersections that are like that. Well, one of the big challenges as we continue to grow, we were talking about, does the property appraiser believe we're going to continue to see growth? And I think her answer was absolutely yes, is what do we do about that growth? And you can only add so many roads and do so many of those land-based kinds of adjustments to deal with traffic and traffic flow. So there are a lot of other things. There's technologies, there are other approaches such as mass transit, and providing alternatives that can actually alleviate this. Well, this is what the Countywide Transportation Master Plan project over the last year has been all about. So I've been fortunate enough to be on the executive committee that oversees input from the 39 municipalities, school district, and special districts into that plan. And August the 6th, we were briefed on the final draft of the report of the Countywide Transportation Master Plan. We are going to be providing a set of recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners on the 26th of this month. And since we've only had the report for about 3 weeks, 1,400-page report takes a little time to get through. So as much as we would like to provide a little more substance from the city's point of view and the school board's point of view, we're going to recommend that they just receive the report, that they don't formally accept it, don't formally adopt it yet, and give all of us a chance to finish the technical review and also the policy reviews that are underway right now. The report itself is very interesting. It lays out what's called the framework. It's kind of a way of looking at all of the different possibilities, given that we have a system that's all interconnected with roads. What happens in one place affects what happens in another, and it's called the systems approach, kind of. And this framework allows, actually forces, a systems approach looking at different problems in different areas in a systemic way. It also provides a toolbox, which includes a computer-based model system that will allow us to run many, many iterations of different combinations of different solutions for corridors, for intersections, see which ones work out best. And the combination of these things, which will be provided through this Countywide Transportation Master Plan, will give us something we've never had before, and that is the big picture approach to dealing with traffic. In addition to that, we have accomplished something that we haven't done in at least the 15 years I've been doing this, and some have told me never before, and that is found a way to work very collaboratively with the county, from the municipality's point of view, from the school district's point of view, and even from the special districts like ITID point of view, involving all of them in this process, which comes through a combination of the issues forum and the executive committee. That's probably the most beneficial output of this entire process. If we truly can learn to work together really effectively on a common problem, on a multi-jurisdictional problem like this, it isn't just traffic that we can deal with. It is a lot of other cross-cutting, county-wide kinds of issues that we can deal with much more effectively. So one of the recommendations that will be made on the 26th will be that we continue with this process, which is under an intergovernmental coordination program that's been in place for many, many years. The most important thing is continue to work together. And so we've demonstrated value in doing that. Hopefully we'll continue to do it, and it will work out to everybody's advantage. I'm very fortunate to have been asked as vice chair to actually do the presentation at the Board of County Commissioners meeting on the 26th, so I'll let you know firsthand how it goes. I mentioned before that we attended, the vice mayor and myself attended Florida League of Cities annual conference. I think there were 500, 700. Large number of attendees there. They are elected officials from all over the state. There are also city managers and others who bring a tremendous amount of expertise. We also get the benefit of breakout sessions that give specialty areas of education. It's kind of a continuing education process that we get exposed to. But once again, perhaps the most important is the human part of it, the relationships that you build with people that have similar problems or different problems, but basically can share the results of their own experiences and collaborate. it was interesting that one of the keynote speakers was former Florida Senator Jeff Brandes, and he offered this idea when we were talking, and when he was talking about, in particular, Amendment 3, but in a more general sense, how to approach issues that are common throughout the state of Florida. And he said, you know, at a national level, state to state, he looks at the 50 states as 50 laboratories, laboratories that study and experiment in democracy. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So he said, you know, we ought to do better at learning from one another, state to state. For me, that transitioned nicely to the 411 cities we have in Florida. And it's one of the reasons that Florida League of Cities Conference is so beneficial to all of us, because it does give us a chance as 411 city labs to share our experiences with one another and hopefully best practices. So it was an excellent conference. I know the Vice Mayor is going to talk about some things that she took away from it. One thing I want to leave you with is we do have some fantastic general session speakers. One of them was an author by the name of Doris Kearns Goodwood. If you are involved in any kind of history, presidential history in particular, she's written a couple of books that are very famous. One of them is A Team of Rivals. It's about Lincoln's cabinet. Fascinating. And you might say, well, how is that relevant? Well, I'll give you two things. One is she has just recently written a book called Leadership in Turbulent Times. Perfect. The other is, she said when somebody asked her, what do you think about what we're doing and where we're going right now? And she said, history gives me hope. So I'll share that with you and leave that with you. Now, with that said, then I will turn to Vice Mayor Sharps and ask her for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, that session with her was absolutely fantastic, and her saying leadership in the session, saying that history gives her hope, made me feel really so much better, especially everything that's going on now. I'm going to start by saying I really enjoy my job as a council member in the village that I live in, and in working to prepare to vote on policy matters that affect us all, everyone. And so I thank the residents that had faith enough in me to think that I am prepared enough and will learn enough to do a good job at this. Now, last week, having the opportunity to go to the League of Cities and attend workshops and listen to other representatives from 411 cities was eye-opening, and it was really awesome. It really was. It's great to know that they have some of the same issues and challenges that we have, and they offer different solutions and possibilities of things that maybe we can try. As the mayor stated, it's okay to copy off of somebody that's done a successful thing. People won't be mad at you. You don't have to recreate the wheel in order to get things done. And I found that to be a great suggestion. We also went to a workshop. There were workshops all days, very busy. But Jefferson Fisher was one of the presenters that I took away a statement from. And his whole point in his presentation was, yeah, he was interesting. He said, bottom line, when you get irritated or someone is like working your last nerve, I believe in saying things straight up or stomping on that nerve with their high heel shoe. It's best to take a deep breath through your nose and then release it through your nose. And I took that to mean not through your mouth, because you're going to say something, but do it through your nose. That way you keep your mouth closed and you can focus on that breath and take a minute to maybe listen for understanding and not to just be able to respond. It was great. I enjoyed it. Again, I was very grateful to be able to go, to learn, to bring things back, and to share with each other as well as the residents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Brodesky.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. It's good to see you all here tonight. I've been spending my time since the last meeting trying to really educate myself on the property tax amendment, the downside of it, the unintended consequences. So the first session I attended was a luncheon at the League of Cities locally here in Palm Beach County. Holly Smith, president at the time, now lovely new past president of the Florida League, spoke about the presentation and really trying to educate us as much as possible. I'm going to share some of those learnings with you. This proposed amendment is a tax shift, not a cut. The dollars that will be lost still go to the expense. We still have those expenses. The expenses aren't going away. The League of Cities has created a toolkit. The Florida League of Cities, I think it's easy.gov or .com. You can Google it and find the toolkit in there. Interesting that if it passed tomorrow, 80 cities would go bankrupt immediately. Of our 411 cities, 80 would be bankrupt. Public safety, emergency response, roads, water systems will be impacted. Even though schools are protected, they're not. Not all the ancillary services are protected. Healthcare district pays for school nurses, those will probably go away. After school programs that Children's Services Council pays for, or prime time, those could be in jeopardy, as well as crossing guards. The schools don't pay for those. So lots of things to consider. It's not an easy decision for any of us residents, but understanding what the consequences, where the unintended consequences are, is really important. The second event I attended was from the Florida Nonprofit Alliance. And of their, they did a survey of nonprofits across the state of Florida. And 92% said that the proposed amendment could affect the organization or the communities they serve. So that means that children who are in, again, after school programs, children's health care, family social service programs, counseling, mental health, programs for families, programs for the broader community. So just a note to keep up on the information and really understanding, I see it, Sylvia, understanding that what the impact will be. I think that's very important. And thank you, Sylvia, for getting me the Florida League of Cities is flcities.com. And that's my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Samuels.
Good evening, everyone. We have a citizens celebration tomorrow noon over at the Rec Center. It's $10 to attend. We also have the Back to School Bash over at Commons Park tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. It's free to attend. We have bounce houses, food trucks, concerts as well. I would like to say congratulations to Division Chief Vermero with the Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. So she was promoted. Congratulations. I would like to say congratulations to Colonel Eric Coleman for his 38 years of service with Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. I look forward to his next adventure. The Supervisor of Elections is hiring, so you can go to their website, votepalmbeach.gov, because they're looking for poll workers, and they do pay for those as well for the November election. And then Young at Heart registration is now open, so anybody over 50 is available or is eligible to apply for membership. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Valentes.
Yeah, my report is about a discussion I recently had with a resident who I've known. I first came into contact with her back in 2011, and we had an issue. She's a small business owner here, and she gives swimming lessons. And we had an issue with the ordinances not allowing what was going on. So we went through the process, and unfortunately, the number one killer of children between the ages of 1 and 4 in Florida, I guess they say unintentional deaths, is drowning. At the time, I thought, hey, it's, I think, a good idea to amend our code and allow for home swim instructions to be something that we can do within the village. It went through planning and zoning, it went through the process, it came before the council, and unfortunately at the time, the council only had 4 members. And the vote on the issue was 2-2, and nothing happened. I know Tallahassee has done things subsequent to then that really has limited our ability as far as what we can do regarding, you know, regulation of home businesses. But my suggestion is, or I would hope, I could get a consensus of council to at least put this issue on next month's agenda just for a discussion and information session, because I don't know personally what we could even do. I still think it's a public safety issue. I like the idea of children being able to get trained how to swim here in Royal Palm Beach, and I think I was the only one around when that came through, so the rest of the council could get a lot of background and context about what the issues were. There were issues on both sides. That's why it was 2-2, but we didn't have a full council to decide the issues. So I would ask if we have at least enough of a consensus to put it on the agenda for next
Let me
month.
put it this way, without objection, and we'll add that to the agenda next month.
Oh.
Any objection?
Oh,
I just have a point of clarification. If you could tell me the time that we only had 4 people on the council, if I remember correctly, it was
2011.
When did we only, so,
2011, me,
yeah,
Martha Webster, Matty Mattioli, and Fred Pinto.
because I was on the council at the time when that came. I thought maybe not unless we had that conversation.
This was.
All right,
I'm
and
positive of
if I
it.
remember correctly, though, it was because of the neighbors.
All right,
It was an
thank
issue
you.
with the neighbors.
Thank you. I think we will then bring that up for discussion, like you said, at the
Well,
next
I
council meeting.
just a discussion information session to go through it and what can be done. As I'm sure Mitty will give us a lot of his instruction, because I know we really had our ability to regulate what can be done in home businesses a couple years ago in Tallahassee. So even what I'm envisioning might not legally be possible, but I would like at least to have the information out there and know about it.
Okay.
So
I think that's an excellent idea.
Well,
And we'll benefit from the fact that you were on the council at that time, so that'll bring some of that history back. I'm sure the village manager did the same. Did you have something you wanted to add?
I do. So I have a question is then, are you referring to home businesses in general or specifically swim schools? Because there are lots of home-based
So
businesses.
can we have that conversation next month?
It'll be general. It'll be general.
I would rather not get into it right now. We've got plenty on the agenda.
Giving us a little bit different criteria.
Right. There's a lot that's changed since then, no doubt about it. Okay, thank you. I think that's good. Is there anything else?
no, that was it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, moving on. Let's see, what do we have next? Petitions, I think, are there any petitions? I don't know if you can submit a petition online, but if there are any hands raised, okay, that's fine. All right, there not being any petitions, we'll move on to public statements on non-agenda and consent agenda items, and I have 3 cards. The first one is Commissioner DeAndre Poole. Commissioner Poole, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to council. I just wanted to come and thank the residents of the village for their support on the primary election on Tuesday. I won my primary, and I just want to thank the village because I know many of the votes came out of the village of Royal Palm Beach. I have the general election November 3rd, and just in general, just participate in the electoral process. Encourage everyone just to let your voice be heard. Vote on November 3rd. Also wanted to just share that we hosted 2 members of a congressional delegation at the port on today. We have about $244 million in infrastructure projects that we need funding, and so we're looking to get support from Washington as well as the state to help us to do some much needed additional improvements. So I just wanted to report on that, and you will see me again. I'll come and make regular updates and reports. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next card is Michael Axelberg. State your name and address, please.
Michael Axelberg, 2963 Fontana Place, Royal Palm Beach. Before I get really started, Jen, thank you for your insight on some of the necessary line items that we all need to get educated on. And I have worked my butt off to try to get people to come here from next door to email blasts and everything else. And there's just so many people that have their minds made up. And they really, 99% of them have no idea on the line items and how this can impact their lives. They shouldn't make up their mind. I'm not going to tell anybody how I'm voting. I don't even know how I'm voting yet. All right, so let me just read this real quickly. Distinguished members of our City Council, Mr. Mayor and Ms. Vice Mayor, thank you for giving our community the opportunity to speak, ask questions, and better understand our city's fiscal management. In light of the upcoming homestead exemption vote and our current budgetary constraints, we must critically examine where we can trim line items, eliminate inefficiencies, and introduce smart revenue streams. I manage my own finances and finances of our HOA and my business before I retired with strict philosophy of preservation. And I believe our city should operate under the same discipline. Just because the reserve funds are available does not mean we are obligated to spend them. We must protect and build our reserves reasonably. I urge the council to consider the following 3 areas of prudent fiscal management. Transitioning free events into revenue streams. We must reevaluate the services and entertainment we currently provide entirely for free. Action, implement a nominal affordable admission fee for events such as concerts at the amphitheater. A small fee will not deter attendance. Instead, it can turn a budget drain into a self-sustaining revenue source, allowing us to host even more events for the community. Reevaluating the scope of recreation center project. We need to see the data and the usage studies and justify the current scale and recreation center expansion. To bring spending down to a more palatable level, we should adjust the scope of work, and we can do that. Meeting rooms. Do we truly require 4 separate meeting rooms? I don't know. By staggering our community activities, we may be able to maximize the utility with perhaps just 2 rooms. A kitchen. We should question the absolute necessity of, do we really need a kitchen at this facility? A gymnasium. Clarification is needed on whether we are building a second gymnasium, as I couldn't really understand the language of it, alongside the existing one. If the current gym simply needs a modernization updating, it's far more fiscally responsible than building a brand new duplicate. Then you spoke about energy efficiency upgrades. We must look closely at the return on investment of retrofitting existing structures for energy efficiencies. Studies show payback, I'll get to this real quick. Studies show payback periods often stretch between 12 and 20 years. Much like residential solar setups that fail to outpace conservative market investments, these long-term retrofits are often poor use of capital. Aggressive collection of delinquency and property taxes. I have before me a newspaper that's full of delinquencies on property tax.
If you could kind of wrap it up, that would be
I'm on
really
my
good.
last
You can
paragraph. Can I finish it?
certainly leave a copy of that if you
Okay.
would like.
What, this?
No, your
My speech?
comments.
Okay, can I read the last paragraph?
I'm sorry?
Can I read the last paragraph?
Go ahead. Yes, finish
Okay.
up.
We must explore every single mechanism at our disposal to pressure these individuals to pay their fair share, whether that involves compounding interest, to pass through balances, asset seizures, or placing liens on income. If we do currently have the tools to enforce these collections, then the bright minds in our city and our county governments must work together to create them. Law-abiding, tax-paying residents should not carry the burden for those who refuse to pay. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Do you want this?
Thank you for your comments. I'd be interested in seeing what you'd written there. Thank you. Give them to the clerk, please. Thank you again. Appreciate your comments, and thanks for coming out this evening. Okay, I have one more card. Angie Reinhardt. Share you just said it, and your address.
My name is Angie Reinhardt. My address is 1520 F Road. I am the owner of Early Childhood Adventures, located inside the Royal Palm Beach Rec Center. We began as a preschool in 2020 and have grown now to include VPK, and now this year a micro school including kindergarten through second grade. I am here tonight because I need your help with an issue that has gone on far too long, the ongoing air conditioning problems at the Recreation Center. This is not a new problem. I have been contracting with the village since 2017, and AC issues have been ongoing concern. However, this most recent problem has existed since May, before the last school year was even over. It continued throughout the summer and has now carried into the new school year. On Tuesday, the conditions inside the facility became so unbearable that I had no choice but to temporarily close the school until the AC is repaired. I am a licensed child care provider overseen by the health department. These conditions are unacceptable, not only from a regulatory standpoint, but to my staff, my students, and the families who trust me to care for their children every day. This closure has real consequences. Parents are scrambling to find childcare so they can go to work. Children are experiencing another disruption at the beginning of a school year. And my 10 employees are currently without a paycheck through no fault of their own. So tonight, I am asking for answers, and more importantly, a plan. First, the replacement part we have been waiting for and was expected to arrive on Friday. What is the current status of that part? And there should be a tracking number. What is the confirmed delivery date, and when would we expect the AC to be fully operational? Second, the village knew the school year was approaching. There should have been a plan to ensure the building was ready before children and staff returned. I should not have had to raise this concern to the village the final week before school started, only to reach a point where closing became my only option. And third, I would have expected communication and coordination with me if the AC was not going to be repaired before the school year began. We should have had a conversation about postponing the start of school before reaching this crisis point. And finally, my most important question is this: what is the village going to do and when to get these 60 children and their families and my employees safely back to school and back to their normal lives?
Thank you. Mr. Manager, you want to take that, or
Yeah, I
Mr.
can
Webster?
take that. I did email you you sent me an email requesting that information. I emailed that back to you. I emailed you the response this afternoon with answers to those questions.
Yes, the email says that the part was ordered on August 6th, which was one day before it was supposed to be delivered.
Right, and it's still not delivered. We call every day. It's a very unique part. That's one of the justifications for updating the rec center. Over the last 15 years, we've spent $300,000 on that air conditioning system. It's out of date, it's antiquated, and it is in the design to be replaced.
Right.
So was there anything that you wanted to add from a public works point of view? I think you all have responsibility, right?
I won't beleaguer the cost. Ray's already identified those costs.
Would you pull the mic over to you?
Sure, I can.
and
Certainly.
turn it
Can you
on,
hear me?
please?
We good? Okay. The issue is not just one maintenance issue. It's been a series of maintenance issues over time. to get us to where we are today, we need to understand where we've been. The system and the monies that we've spent over the last 11, 12 years, we're replacing components of the AC system. We've replaced the chiller itself back in fiscal year 15. We've replaced 5 of the 8 air handler units. Those are the original ones from when the building was built in 1992. We can't get parts for those anymore. You have to get aftermarket parts for those. The chiller itself, over the past 6 to 7 months, she is correct, has been going down, and the staff then has to go and manually restart it, which means to kill the power to it and then to bring it back up, which takes time for it to cool off. And the latest issue is the current repair that's needed to get the system to be able to operate at 100%. That part was ordered, and it had a 7 to 10 business day. My contractor has been contacting the company. They do have a partial delivery that they're willing to send out, or a partial delivery on the parts. And then next week we'll get the remaining portions of those. But to mitigate that, our current plan for the daycare area is to rent 3 large portable AC units, put one in each one of the classrooms. One was installed today. 2 more for the other rooms will be installed tomorrow. And we are renting those units. Then I do understand that the health department may have to come in and inspect it.
Right, so just because you're putting them in doesn't mean that it's going to be approved by the health department.
I understand.
So it would almost make sense to have the health department come and tell us first prior to spending more money.
Well, I have to mitigate the AC issue, so what we would then ask is that, I understand that you're calling them to have them come in and do an inspection. Try and get that in as quickly as we can.
The larger units that are going in, I was over there this afternoon, and the one room of the 3 rooms that it is in is working and did cool the room sufficiently. So I don't see that, hopefully there won't be any problem with the health department. But if
Well, some of this obviously is stuff over which each of us only has so much control. You only have so much control. They only have so much control. Depend upon people doing what they are being paid to do, and unfortunately, when they don't, then it ripples through and it impacts everybody. Understand your situation totally. It sounds like we have a fix that might at least mitigate, not bring it to a temperature that is really most comfortable, like when it's operating totally. But again, the reason we're doing this is because it's an old facility and it needs desperately to be upgraded as well as expanded. So this is all part of that, and it's unfortunate that it turned out this way. I suspect everybody looked at the possibilities here and said, pretty good chance we'll be all right.
I'm wondering why they didn't ask me to postpone the start of the school year.
Okay, well, here's one of the things that I generally try to do is not dwell a lot on the past unless we're going to learn something from it. Maybe we can, probably, certainly, but at this particular point in time, we can't fix that. What we can do, though, is going forward is make sure we stay on top of whatever mitigation is possible and stay on top of
it might help for me to answer that question. That wasn't the question we were faced with. Do we postpone it? What the question that we would have had with the construction of the site was, do we cancel it for a year and a half or 2 years and not have it in that facility and have them go somewhere else?
Okay.
We worked really, really hard with the contractor to have the facilities available for her school at the beginning of school. And that was our goal. And that's what we thought we set out to do. And that was our goal from it. It was never our intention to postpone things. It was never our intention to have the school go away. We enjoy the school being there. The service she provides to the students that are there is an awesome program, and we want it to continue as much as we can. We originally had it planned for the whole school to be closed down during the summer and everything built in that section during the summer. But the contractor couldn't get all his ducks in a row because of the short time frame he had to do it to guarantee that that would happen. So we put that off until next summer with the idea that it will be closed down, that area, and it will be completely redone. The whole rec center will be closed down for 7 months, and that's when the refit of the existing area will be done. We're doing everything we can to keep Parks and Rec operating out of that facility during the reconstruction of that facility. And it is inconvenient, and it is warmer in there at times, and it is not working at a construction site. Trying to operate with a construction site going on is not ideal.
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor, is that AC unit and those remaining 3 air handling units are scheduled to be replaced as part of this project when the building is shut down.
I know, and this conversation took place, the one that the manager just shared, about not postponing, not delaying, not asking, not shutting down, working the schedule around the school way before this happened. I heard that firsthand. This is just a very complicated situation, like I say, that depends upon a lot of people doing what needs to be done, things not failing that you didn't expect to fail. I think the best that we can do at this point is keep talking, keep communicating, and if you need any additional help, I mean, you know where we are, and you know where the village manager is, and we do think very highly of the school, obviously, we really do. So,
But I would like to go on record to say that the AC is not connected to the construction. The AC is broken because it's old.
But the AC is scheduled to be replaced. The
As part
chiller
of
is
this.
scheduled to be replaced, all
Right,
the
but
air
it
handlers.
doesn't have connection with the construction.
It's part of this construction project.
okay, all right. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. We appreciate it. We appreciate what everybody's doing, trying to work through this difficult situation. I hesitate to use that cliche about this is like changing a tire on a moving car, but it's like changing a tire on a moving car. There are a lot of things can happen, unfortunately, and we'll just keep working at it and keep communicating. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, that's the last of the cards that I have. You have any other cards? Are there any hands raised, Mr. Mayor, Manager? Okay. Then let us move on to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, would you please read the consent agenda into the record?
Yes, Mayor, I will. Thank you. Number 1, approval of the minutes of the council budget workshop meeting of July 9th, 2026, and council regular meeting of July 16th, 2026. 2, approval and authorization for the village manager to enter into a contract with Collie Doctor Plus, Cigna Healthcare to provide health, dental, New York Life for life and disability insurance, and Aetna Resources for living for the EAP for the employees of the Village of Royal Palm Beach. 3, approval and authorization to increase the not to exceed contract amount to $54,450 for the custodial services cultural center events agreement with Nevis Cleaning Services for services required for the remainder of fiscal year 2026. 4, approval of a special events permit application by I Think Financial Credit Union to conduct a community shred event at 11317 Okeechobee Boulevard on Friday, August 28, 2026, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. 5, approval of a special events permit application by All Paws Animal Clinic to conduct an educational event at 1011 North State Road 7, Suite FGH, on Saturday, September 12, 2026, from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. 6, approval of special events permit application by Mission Barbecue to conduct a 9/11 ceremony at 11929 Southern Boulevard on Friday, September 11, 2026, from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. 7, approval of a bid award and authorization for the village manager to enter into a contract with AUM Construction Incorporated, the lowest responsible bidder, in the amount of $69,500 for the radar speed signs EN 1802. 8, approval of a bid award and authorization for the village manager to enter into a contract with Turnbull Environmental, the lowest responsible bidder, in the amount of $531,000 for the Canal Rehab Phase 2, SW 2503. 9, adoption of resolution number 2615, a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Royal Palm Beach, Florida, declaring certain personal property owned by the village to be either surplus to its needs and sold at a publicly noticed sale, or determined to be obsolete, non-serviceable, or beyond economic repair pursuant to and in accordance with the provisions and requirements of Section 2-3 of the Village Code, and authorizing the village to remove such surplus property when sold or disposed of from the fixed assets of the village.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Appreciate that. Does any member of the council wish to pull any of the consent agenda items?
Consent agenda item number 7, please.
And I'd like to pull number 8.
7 and 8, okay. I will entertain a motion to approve all of the consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 9.
I make a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 6 and 9.
Mr. Mayor, second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any opposed. They pass. Let's begin with consent agenda item number 7. Councilwoman Samuels.
Thank you. I think the village manager, I'm not sure if the village engineer is available, but if you can, so if I understand correctly, this is for radar speed signs to be 4 on Crestwood Boulevard, 4 on Royal Palm Beach Boulevard, and at the amount of almost $70,000. My question is if you could explain to the residents what that is, and then what is our end goal, because it's a lot of money.
Okay. Yes, that is correct. There's 8 of them. There's 4 on Royal Palm Beach Boulevard and 4 on Crestwood Boulevard. And what this is a result of
This is Chris.
is
There's only 2 of them on Royal Palm Beach Boulevard. It's a total of 6.
2 and 2.
total 6. Okay, I'm sorry.
4 on Crestwood, two on the north end, 2 on the south end, and then 2 on Royal Palm Beach Boulevard, centered between Country Club Drive, the 2 outlets on Royal Palm Beach Boulevard.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. And what this was a result of was we had our traffic consultant give a presentation to us last August on the perceived speeding problem on Crestwood Boulevard and Royal Palm Beach Boulevard. One of the suggestions of that to slow people down is to put these speed signs out. These speed signs have been effective. When people read them, they see their speed, they see the posted speed limit, and they do slow down. How long of effect that has it's more effective when it's first put in, and it diminishes a little bit over time, but they do work. The other thing that this is set up for, and these are where we get the most speeding complaints. The other thing that these do is collect the data for targeted police ticketing. So we'll get 24/7 data on the cars going down both these roads. We can see when the speeders are, and then the police can target them and ticket them, and that will slow them down. And that's what council voted to do.
Okay, so you use the term perceived speeding on Crestwood. So does PBSO tell us that there is speeding? I know that they've been patrolling out there. There were signs out there before. Is that an issue? And then my other question is when you talked about the data and working with the sheriff's office and issuing citations, is it citations through the camera system? Is it then the data goes to the sheriff's office, then they evaluate the data, and then they send a patrol officer out there at those specific dates and times to then issue citations?
These are not speed cameras that issue tickets. That's not what these are. These collect the data. The data would be reviewed, and then selective enforcement would be more narrowed in its time.
Okay, so the point of this agenda item then is to fact-finding as far as specification on dates, times, exact speeding, so that the sheriff's office can then go out there and put patrol cars out there.
It was also a goal of the council at that time to get the data on the road and see what the people are doing, because there's another solution to people not traveling at 85% of the cars not traveling at the speed limit, and that solution is raise the speed limit. That's not typically the solution of public entities. It's the engineering solution. So before that decision was made to raise the speed limits, because there are some benefits in doing that. We did find that the number of accidents on Crestwood, South of Okeechobee, that where it's at 40, has less accidents than where it is 35 and on Royal Palm Beach Boulevard in Crestwood. And one of the traffic engineering reasons for that is the cars are driving more about the same speed and the road becomes more predictable. So council had asked that we get this data, we evaluate that, and in the meantime, we're using them to collect data, and we're using them to hopefully slow people down.
Okay, and then for the almost 70,000, is this a one-time fee, and then are the signs portable that we can move them to another location, or once they're in, they're permanent, and then if we wanted them on other roadways, we would then need to purchase additional ones? Are they in there permanently?
There would be a significant cost to move them. There's a significant foundation that goes in with these, and they're not portable.
Okay, so it's a one-time fee then for these 6 cameras?
Yes, this is a one-time fee.
And
There's
then
no
what about,
continuation, no continued fee with these.
what about data storage? Who then gets the information? Do we now have to, is that a different fee?
No, we will get the information.
And that's all included in this?
Yes.
There's not an additional stuff? And then partnering with the sheriff's office so they have the data, that's not an additional?
No.
Okay, and they're all compatible with that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Someone care to make a motion on number 7?
If there are no other questions, I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda item number 7.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. It passes unanimously. Number 8.
Thank you. To the village manager. This $531,000 comes with a state grant. Could you talk about that?
Yes, this is one of our CBIR's community budget information requests that we send up to Tallahassee every year with our lobbyist. And this particular one, we have a $500,000 grant of the 531, and we have consistently used these for improving the drainage system, canals.
So thank you. What a great cost savings for doing the grant on this one.
Indeed.
So if there's no other questions, I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda number 8.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving number 8?
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any opposed. Consent agenda item number 8 is approved. That completes the consent agenda. We can now move on to the regular agenda. And that would be, the first item would be update, questions, and discussion regarding village finances. And this is a continuation of our budget process that began actually on this particular thrust of what we've been talking about having to do with the millage rate. About a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we've talked about this twice at citizen summits, and we have a regular process that has now unfolded over a period of several months. So with that said, I'll just make one other comment. The most important thing, one of the most important things we do as a council is to put together a budget because that is us being entrusted with taxpayers' funds to be able to do the work of the village and to be able to provide the services that our taxpayers, our residents actually want for us. It is a challenging process because it's constantly trading off one thing for another, trying to understand where the greatest value is and that type of thing. It's one of the reasons why we have several steps in this process. It's one of the reasons we do citizen summits to try to pull in the input from citizens in a timely fashion. And as I said earlier, we really appreciate those of you who have shown up and stayed around for the rest of this meeting. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our village manager.
Okay. So at the July 16th council meeting, we were asked to prepare an agenda item comparing our expenditures, fees, and reserves of a budget with a millage rate of 2.15 and one of 1.92. The 2.15 was what staff proposed, what I proposed for next year's budget based on the balancing our budget balancing our operating budget over the next 10 years and with reserves, not using reserves for the operating budget, but with the goal of still using reserves for capital and capital replacement. That got us through the 10-year period. Leaving the budget, leaving the millage rate at 1.92, there's somewhere within that 10-year period, it's projected at 2033 right now, that we would have to fund a deficit in the operating and fund a deficit in the capital replacement. Since that July meeting, and in the July meeting, our 1.92 did not cover the full operating. It was at a deficit of just under $300,000. Since that meeting, we did get our costs for our health care. It came in 5% lower than what we had budgeted, and that difference does cover operating budget and puts it in the black, with only a $6.3 million cumulative operating deficit over the 10-year period. And they are projected numbers based on estimates. And unfortunately, they're estimates from 1 year that get extrapolated over 10 years. And that's why looking at things year by year is not necessarily a bad idea. We do know sometime in the future we're going to have to fund capital replacement through recurring revenues. I think one of the comments that was made at the August 16th meeting, or the July 16th meeting, was that there's such a change that may come to us November 3rd, that so much will have to be looked at, that doing this smaller change now is not necessary. But given that, comparing the expenditures, fees, and reserves. So the expenditures, since the operating budget balances, expenditures suggested to remain the same for each of the budgets. And I will tell you, we give you budgets that don't have excess in them. They are status quo. They're not changing a lot of the ways we do things, as was suggested earlier under public comments. Under fees, I did provide some fees to you on what we're looking at changing a little bit in Parks and Rec. You have a list of all the fees in the athletic programs, the senior programs, and the community events. I am doing some small changes in there, and most of the changes was a little bit larger increases and consistent increases in the non-residential fees. And then in the community events, we have in the budget Westfest, which is a $92,000 event that is free to residents, or free to everybody. There was some discussion in possibly replacing that with the seafood, getting rid of one of two, with the Westfest or Seafood Festival. Seafood Festival costs us $25,000 because we only pay for the entertainment and some amusement rides. With Westfest, we pay for everything. Like I said, right now we have Westfest in there, but if the council wanted to save another $50,000, about $60,000, we would do, I think the direction to do seafood instead of Westfest, because they are pretty close to each other and back to back. So I would need direction on which one council wants to do, Westfest at $92,000 or Seafood Festival at $25,000. And then the last thing to compare is the reserves. When I look at the 1.92, we'll utilize $51,800,000 of the reserves over the 10-year financial period, with a -2 remaining balance. In other words, we can't go to -2. We're going to have a rate increase sometime before that. At a millage rate of 2.15, we're going to use $37 million of reserves for capital replacement and capital, and there'll be 32% reserves remaining at the end of the 10-year financial period. Our policy is to have no less than 25%, so that would get us through the period without an increase, as it's projected. Given the tentative adoption of the proposed millage rate at 2.15 mils by council on July 16th, at the first budget hearing on September 10th, staff will present the budget at 2.15 mils. However, at the first budget hearing, council has the option to amend the tentative budget as it sees fit and can ultimately approve a proposed millage rate of less than 2.15. But you cannot approve one higher than 2.15. And the 2.15, as I mentioned earlier, would require a unanimous vote of council. If that were not possible, we will have prepared a 1.92 budget that we will bring to council at the first budget hearing. And if that's what, because council has to approve a budget at that budget hearing. And you have to have a completed budget to review and approve. So we will have both of them present at that meeting, and council will need to make a decision of one or the other.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. What the village manager was just reporting on was based on what we asked the staff for, and that was a side-by-side comparison between the two millage rates, which are the basis then for two budgets that we're looking at right now. And one of the options that we had and wanted to keep open, at least some of us did, was to lower the millage rate from something that we were required to establish on July the 16th, and that was the maximum millage rate. And as the village manager just said, we knew that we could lower it based upon any additional information that might come in between now or then, July 16th, and the time at which we have to vote for the adoption of the actual millage rate, which is September the 10th. Some of us were very interested in allowing more information to come in. Turns out we got some information about the medical insurance that was positive. And so having more information was important to all of us. Some of us actually spoke to a lot of you all, asking what your input was, what your opinions were, what your suggestions were, and we'll continue to do that. That also informs us and puts us in a better position to be able to actually engage tonight. Tonight, we are not going to be adopting a millage rate or a budget. We're going to be taking the next step in this process. So in order to move forward with that, I'm going to turn to Councilman Valentes and give him the floor.
Yeah, most of the comments I've heard back from the residents and the businesses is everyone wants to stay at the 1.92, which is kind of intuitive. No one wants to pay more taxes, but at some points, you need the services, and that point will come at some point in time, but I don't think that point in time has to be now. I do like one of the suggestions from the village manager, which was swapping, although, I like Westfest better. I mean, we got to look at the cost of things. Seafood Festival is cheaper, and if you have that in January, it might be, or February, it might be more successful. And if push comes to shove and we need to, I could see the elimination of both of those, because these are hard decisions we have to make, and make even harder ones after November. So these are, just my thoughts on what we've been presented. I'm sure everybody else has thoughts as well, but I just wanted to put that out there, that my people or people who have talked to me have all been 192, this is not it. Do not raise the millage rate. So,
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Rodowski.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. One, could you share with us if in the event, because the expenses aren't going away, they're recurring costs. So if we don't pass the 2.15 this year, what kind of millage rate are we looking at next year?
Well, I'm sorry, Mayor.
So one of the things that I've been saying all along, and I think you just heard Councilman Valentes say the same thing, depending upon the outcome of the vote on Amendment 3, we're going to be faced with two very different situations. if that is approved, we're going to wind up having to take a step back from everything. And I've heard the word reset used to describe the restructuring of our financial structure here in Royal Palm Beach. And so my thinking really has been along the lines of waiting until we know what the outcome of November 3rd is before we start to adjust anything. Otherwise, we run the risk of doing incremental changes that may be suboptimal along the way without knowing the full impact of what we're trying to actually address. And so, as Councilman Valentes said, waiting until we know what the results of November 3rd, I think is a prudent thing to do. And I don't know, and I'm certainly open to hearing what the downside would be to doing that, waiting until that point in time.
The downside is if it doesn't pass, we're now we do have to ask for higher than 2.15.
Well, there's several options if this passes in November, and we will have to look at expenses. We will have to look at every revenue stream, every charges for services, and it'll be a total reset. You know, every year we're required to calculate what they call a rollback rate, and the rollback rate is what's the rate if the same amount of money is collected this coming year that you collected this last year, which, unless the rule changes, our rollback rate next year would be 3.14.
So there will have to be adjustments made one way or the other next year. But we will know what we're dealing with for sure. And the concern that I have, like I said, is so we make a couple of adjustments this year. Let's say we adjust the fee schedule. We adjust it by, 10% or something of that nature. And then we also adjust an event. And we reduce and change the event. And then we find ourselves with November 3rd, taking away 42% of the property taxes that we have collected along the way against homesteaded properties. Now all of a sudden we're into a mode of we're going to have to go back in and make another change. One of the things that's been my experience has been it is better to make one substantial change than it is to make incremental changes. Psychological impact on people just tends to be much, much better. You also come up with a better answer because you know the full scope. So that's my position.
So interestingly enough, do you know what our tax rate was in 1995?
No.
0.060. That was our millage in 1995. We went to 2.14 in 2006. It wasn't until 2010 that we went to the 1.92 that we are here today. And so through those years, there was a gradual decline, which is great. But I give our residents more credit in being able to adjust when we need to adjust. Additionally, let's bring up the Citizen Summit again. And 71% of our residents 2 years ago said they were okay with an increase. Last year, 91% said that they were okay with an increase. If we're not going to listen to our residents or not going to take that to heart, then I suggest we don't do a Citizen Summit. Because it's disingenuous to ask for opinions and get feedback and then not have residents tell us. I suggested that we do surveys. People don't want to spend the cost on that to go out to the broader community. So we're in an interesting conundrum.
Okay, Mr. Manager, I think we talked about survey at one point in time. Perhaps not the mechanism that Councilwoman Rodesky is talking about, but we do have a capability, do we not, to reach out to the community and get some additional input from the residents?
You did leave it in the budget, the $13,000 for a professional company to do surveys, and you directed me to bid it out and request proposals.
But we already had something in.
We do have Survey 1, 2, 3.
That's what I was talking about.
And we do own that software, and we have used that software. I got to admit, we're not real good in getting responses.
Making the effort seems sometimes worthwhile, and sometimes you get surprised by it. Speaking of that, it would be great if we had 200 people show up at Citizen Summit. Last year, I think we had 40. Is that about right? The year before that, we had a good turnout. We had about 80, almost 90 people there. That was a 70-plus favorable reaction, right? Both of which, in my mind, fit under the heading of overwhelming support for. I hear what you're saying. In the world of surveys, in the world of statistics, it's not statistically significant, and we know that. And so it's input, it's valuable. It is just, it's good input, it is. So perhaps reaching out and getting some more survey input would be helpful to us. Again, we're not making a decision tonight. What we're having is this conversation. And at the end, I'm going to ask each one of you all what your preference would be with regard to the choice between the two millage rates to provide some additional direction to the staff. So with that thought in mind, I will turn to Councilman Valentis.
I agree with Councilwoman Radusky about the last two citizen summits, and actually I was surprised about, hey, people had no, at least the input I got from them was, got no problem, paying for the services that we have come to expect. Unfortunately, at both of those times, we did not have Amendment 3 on the ballot. So most of my input post that has been, yeah, with Amendment 3 out there, don't increase our, millage rate. And the two millage rates that you discussed earlier, I mean, I wasn't here in 1985, but I know we had a fire department, I'm pretty sure, and a police force, right? So that's why the millage rate, I'm sure, was a lot higher. And then in 2006, I know a big savings was when we went to the sheriff's department, correct, Mr. Manager? Or we got a lot more for our money than what we were paying for our Royal Palm Beach Police Department. So, I mean, yeah, there have been changes over the years, but there are big explanations for those. And if you want to be honest, the millage rate we do pay for the MSTU is kind of included.
From 1995, that's when you said the 7 point something, and there was a lot of changes about that time. There was a change, a specific directed change that we would be a family-oriented community, not just a senior citizen community. There was bond issues issued for the construction of the Civic Center, the Rec Center. We had a fire department, we had a police department. We went into the county MSTU in 2005. We contracted services with them starting in 1998, 99 with the fire rescue, and then we went into the MSTU in 2005, which took that millage rate out of ours and shifted it to the county, and then the sheriff's office. It wasn't an immediate savings. It was pretty neutral because we insisted on keeping all the employees and not losing any employees in that transfer. But the percent growth has definitely worked for us.
Okay. Madam Vice Mayor.
I agree with Councilwoman Radusky. I've been talking to people as well, and we have been discussing the amendment that's coming forth in November. But people are still telling me that they'd rather the millage rate go up now than to be faced with a problem later. That's how they feel right now. They have no problem with it. As far as the Seafood Fest or the West Fest, if you're gonna let one of them go, let the West Fest go. Because the Seafood Fest is way cheaper than the other event. And if you want to incorporate West Fest, just ask everybody to do a cowboy hat and boot contest and combine the two. I'm just saying, it's an option. But not spending $92,000 sounds like a really great thing to me.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Samuels.
Thank you. So there's a few things that we've heard multiple times. I think this is the third time we've had this conversation. One of them is expenses aren't going away, or what we have is what we have. I look at it as my own household. When you have a change in your expenses, you change, or change in your income, you change in your expenses. So for instance, when I had a child, we stopped eating steak every week. We then started having steak once a week. We had ramen noodles most of the time. So we adjusted our spending based on our income. My frustration always with government has been, we're going to raise taxes, or we have the spending, or we have our fixed costs. I've said before, I appreciate that each department has gone through and cut quite a bit. We do normally operate on a very lean budget. We don't have a lot of extra stuff. The Citizen Summit was brought up. We average roughly 50 residents out of 38,000 that come to that. So I don't think that that is a good judge of what the residents want, or we're being disingenuous to those who came. We appreciate those who came, and they gave us a lot of other feedback as well. The survey. I remember discussing the survey, and on the line item, it's $14,000. That this was something that was brought back from a National League of Cities conference that one of the council members went to. We discussed it. We discussed having a presentation, and next thing I know, it's a line item in the budget. I don't ever remember voting on it here that was going to be something. If people aren't going to come to a Citizen Summit and tell us, they're certainly not going to respond to a survey. Everyone can get in touch with any one of us here, any staff. We get lots of emails all the time from everybody. If somebody had something to say, they would let us know. Now, dues and fees that the Village Council incurs is over $30,000 a year. Those are just from all the organizations that we belong to, that we attend. Our travel and reimbursement expenses for the Village Council is over $30,000 a year. That's to reimburse us for all of our trips, all of our things that we go to, and things like that as well. And we've also spent over $230,000 in art in public places. That's taxpayer money that's going to purchases the artwork that you see around the village. So these are some things that when you talk about it and you say, okay, well, wait a minute. Yes, we do our free concerts in the park, and the rides are free for for children. The music is free. It's a great way for businesses to make money because we have our food truck vendors there. A lot of our larger events have craft and areas there that are selling their products. So there are a lot of small businesses that benefit from those. So we do need to adjust a little bit more of what we're doing. I think it's great that over the last 19 years, we've maintained our millage rate at 1.92. As values go up, we do collect a little bit more with that. But I think it's just readjusting what we're doing as well. 1.92 may not be the final number going forward. It may be enough to get us through this year, but I think we need to look deeper into what we're spending and how much we're spending and what we can cut. And then when times get better again, and then we can always lower the millage rate. We've done that before. We started out high, as Councilwoman Radusky said. If we were at 7.0 in 1990, we've lowered it since then. So it does need to fluctuate based on what we want to do. We have a lot more homes coming on the market. The southern properties that's out there, that'll be more income coming in as well. A lot of vacant bays throughout our area, that those will be filled, and those are extra businesses coming in. So I think there's more that we need to do, and certainly you guys here, I don't remember seeing all of you at the Citizen Summit, so thank you for coming out, but this is also a different group of individuals that are there. More people listening to us online, more that can reach out to us via email or coming to an office. And it's all staff that's accessible as well, too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Radusky?
Yeah, regarding Seafood Festival or Westfest, the theme of Westfest has been synonymous with Royal Palm Beach for how many years? 30 years? Is it possible to swap the theme and have Pirates of the Treasure Coast facilitate Westfest as the theme instead of the Seafood Festival? It keeps the theme of our village intact while reducing the costs. So that's one idea. The art in public places, those dollars are paid by the builder for vertical construction on construction sites that are new construction. So Aldi was paid, there's a sculpture in front of Aldi, that was paid by the builder. It was not paid with public dollars. The fees that we're looking at to increase to compensate for not increasing the millage will hit our seniors and our children. Summer camp, soccer, basketball, all the sports, Young at Heart, all the other adult senior programs will have higher fees, just so you all understand what we're talking about. These are hard decisions we have to make. If we make them today versus a year from now, if property tax does not pass, if educated voters go out and they decide that they don't want to go for higher taxes, sales tax, they were talking about increasing sales tax to 16%. So there's the shift again, right? The expenses are not going to go away. So is it better to agree to a tax increase now or wait a year? It could look like $50, $60 for 1 year for a 2.15 versus $152 at 2.50. So these are the things, these are the hard decisions we're having to talk about and discuss. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let me just turn to the village manager and ask him to remind us what one of the principal things was that we were trying to accomplish by taking a long-range look, which prompted us to consider a relatively small raise in tax rate. I mean, that's what got this started. It wasn't, we couldn't afford what we're doing right now and that kind of thing. It was more about the future, was it not?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. When we sold the utility, we made a conscious decision to set a rate because, as you know, we were lowering the rate every year up until 2010. We made a conscious decision to have the rate cover the operating, and that all capital, whether it's replacement or new, would be paid for by the fees over the next 10 to 15 years. It's easy to project. It's easy to look at. If everything stays status quo, which obviously November 3rd would not keep everything status quo, and hence why wait another year. If everything stays status quo, the trend is that we have to have a recurring revenue to cover capital replacement because it's in a diminishing fund now, a one-time fund now, and sometime in the future it has to switch to a recurring revenue fund to maintain what we have. It just has to. New capital, that we don't even budget more than 5 years out, and we'll just, if things are that tight, we just don't do new capital. But capital replacement is maintaining what you have. Not any different than any homeowners association is required to do, any condominium association is required to do. So we will have to make that change sometime in the near future. It's not projected that we need to make it until 2033. So it's plenty of time ahead. Talking about it today and not 2032 is more about we valued the reserves, we valued the decisions it allowed us to make. We valued the revenue that it gave us because it gave us an interest revenue that when the economy was bad, that revenue went up. We're hearing on the radio today how the bond market is paying higher. Well, and your treasury notes are paying higher now. It costs more for people or they cost more for the government to pay them, but we benefited by having that revenue stream. But when that money's all gone, it will be more susceptible to the economy.
Okay, and it's quite possible that the change would be more significant than it would be to make it sooner rather than later. We keep talking about November 3rd, providing information that's really, really important to us because it could be a game changer. Those things press on me. So with that thought, unless there are any other comments, I'm going to look to each member of the council and ask the following questions. Which rate do you presently prefer, 2.15 or 1.92? realizing that it is a preference, it's not a vote, we're not voting, we're not doing anything that is, that could not be changed in between now and September the 10th, when we will be voting on that. So which rate do you prefer, 2.15 or 1.92? And then what additional information do you need before September 10th? So those two questions in mind, I'm going to turn to our Vice Mayor and ask her if she would respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My preference is, as I've always said, I said it the last meeting, I'll say it again, unfortunately, it's a 2.15. We received information, we received great information regarding the finances as to what we know is going to happen. November 3rd is, we have no clue. But from what we do know and from what the city manager told us this evening, with the 2.15, we would be acting proactively instead of reactively. That's what I'm looking at. Of course, I am always open for more information. I definitely want to go back and take a look at what we have, similar to looking at the two events and either getting rid of one or incorporating them together to lower the cost is something that would be acceptable to me. I also suggested that I thought that all of us basically had other jobs that provided us with insurance. So I suggested that maybe we could give up our health insurance as council members as a savings for health insurance regarding that line item. But that's just a thought. That's where I am, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Brodesky?
Thank you, Mayor. I understand that the health care is part of an ordinance that can't be changed. To that point, Mr. Manager, it was asked that all of us look at those budgets, our own council budget, and has every one of us reduced our budget to some degree?
I've gotten a lot of different information. What I did is the 2.15, the original budget we have is since the operating budget.
Let me clarify. Our council, just our council budget.
I left the original budget. I did not take anything out of it.
Did we come to you and ask for our specific $5,000, $2,000 to be reduced?
We sent emails on it,
Right.
or I know we got an
We
email
did.
about it, and I
We did.
responded. I know
Right.
that.
The budget that we have at 2.15 and
What's in there
1.92
right
does
now?
not have a reduction from what you originally provided us.
To the best of my knowledge, we did each respond. I want to jump in here, though, and say we're spending a lot of time talking about this. This is the third time we've had this conversation, and quite frankly, I think if we want to bring this to closure, because we're spending a lot of time on this, and any amount of money is important, but when we're wrestling with hundreds of thousands of dollars, at least, if not millions, then I think perhaps what we ought to look for is a motion and decide if we want some kind of action to be taken on these things as a council, because to continue this conversation is not productive.
Mayor, there was a point to my question.
Okay.
And that was, I believe that all five of us reduced our amount. And back to Councilwoman Samios' point, 2 meetings ago, if we reduced it, you would support the 2.15.
All right, so once again,
And so
this is going to continue.
I'm supporting the
We have
2.15. That is my
spent a total of
comment.
about an hour talking about this particular topic. And quite frankly, there are so many more things, and we have another subject coming up that's going to be, I think, an interesting discussion, and we do want to have some time on this thing. So unless there's a motion of some sort, I would like us to move on at this point, so I can get the rest of the input on this. That'd be all right?
Okay.
Can we do that?
Well, we were going through for each person, and not everyone has had a chance to respond to the question.
Right, so if that's all right with you, I'm going to go ahead and move on then to Councilman Valentes.
Okay. Number one, support 1.92. Questions I would need to know. I think one of them was already answered tonight, but these are MIDI questions, so she can get back to us unless she knows off the top of her head. If it were to go to 2.15, we would need a 5-0 unanimous vote, correct?
That's correct. 2.15, you need unanimous vote. 1.92, you need 4 of 5
Okay.
of you.
Thank you. That's my question. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, and so you said 1.92, and that was the additional information you wanted? Okay, great. Councilwoman Samios,
So-
2.15, 1.92, and
I'm
additional
gonna,
information.
I will tell you my answer, and I will preference with, I find this process extremely frustrating when we're trying to discuss the budget, and we're going back and forth on whether we should raise it or not. We didn't have enough time to talk about its strategic plan. We don't have enough time to talk about, this is the third council meeting it's been brought up and moved down, so it's extremely frustrating. I'm gonna go with 1.92, and when we look at the budgets, again, it's all been elevated. I stated, all the numbers that I stated are what Royal Palm Beach residents pay and what we expend. So, thank you.
Okay. Any additional information that you'd like between now and 10th?
I would thank staff for going through their budgets and making sure that they've cut where they can. Once again, I think it's us, and I don't know how we ballooned from a $2,000 individual budget to $15,000.
Okay. All right, so my response, let me start off with this. On the 16th of July, we were identifying the maximum millage rate, which meant that we could reduce it to the lower, and we were talking about two numbers in particular, 2.15 and 1.92. One of the things I was hoping to be able to do was gather more information. I've said this before, I'll say it again, because that's why I picked 2.15 for the most part, was to allow some options, to allow some time to get more information in, and we did, And I will say again what I said a moment ago, and that is that Amendment 3 is going to change everything. At least it has that potential. And that change of everything will necessitate us taking a step back and doing some of what we're already doing right now. But we're doing it without the benefit of understanding what amount of money we're really working with, or what we would have to do to the millage rate, what we would have to do to the fee schedule, what we would have to do to our events. And until that information is known, my inclination is to say, if we don't need to decide this year, or better still, if we would be better off waiting until we know what the results of the November 3rd election are with regard to Amendment 3, then I think waiting until we do know those results, which would put us into the budget coming next year. So in answer to the question, what rate do you presently prefer? I would go with 1.92. And the reason, again, I said is because the 2.15 was a way to allow some flexibility, some options, some open thinking. We have now gotten the benefit of that, at least up to this point, and there will be more information coming in between now and the 10th of September, I believe, as well. So 2.192 is my preference at this particular point in time. Any additional information is
1.9.
I'm sorry, 1.92. And the additional information, of course, is anything that we can glean from a better understanding of what that Amendment 3 is. I don't know about you all, but just about every time I hear that briefed, I hear something in there that I didn't hear before. And not the least of which was this thing called enabling legislation. And I've talked to people that have done that, and that can change the complexion dramatically. So with all that uncertainty, to be making these changes at this point in time and shifting to 2.15 doesn't seem to me, it's not my preference anyway, let me just put it that way. So having answered all of those questions, then, Mr. Manager, do you need some more direction from the council?
I have the West Fest in the budget right now that balances. If I do not have Seafood Festival in there, there was a lot of discussion about doing the seafood versus the West Fest. I just need a majority preference from the council.
Okay?
I mean, you could even say, do the West Fest, but only spend $65,000, because we can cut things out. We can not do as much. The thing is, the Seafood Festival is, we don't have the overtime at the Seafood Festival, and we don't have nearly the staff cost at the Seafood Festival, and the only thing we pay for is the band and minimal amusements, and that's why it's only $25,000. We can do a scaled down West Fest. We could do a Seafood Fest upped a little bit, or we could do them. Well, we don't have both in the budget, so right now it's West Fest at $92,000 is what's in the budget. I just need a preference from the council. What?
Okay. So I'm
92.
I'm going to go back to each one of the members and ask for your preference with regard to West Fest, Seafood Fest. Start with the Vice Mayor.
I stated before keeping the Seafood Fest because it's less money. But if it is up to the council, you all would rather have the West Fest and we can scale it down to keep it from being $92,000, then I'll agree with that.
Okay. Councilwoman Wodecki?
I would like the price of West Fest, the price of Seafood Fest for the West Fest Festival. So why couldn't our vendor do West Fest? That's my suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
They can't do that for that price. They just can't. They're involved in both events. They're the ones who rent out all the tents in both of our events. They cannot provide the West Fest amenities at that cost. They wouldn't do it. They won't do it.
A scaled down Western themed festival they can't do?
That's not what he said. He said they couldn't do it for $25,000. So a modified version of West Fest seems to be of interest to a lot of us. Is there a way that we could actually get
modified West Fest?
A modified West Fest?
Yes, we can do that. It'd be less amusements, and it might be less things.
All right, let me go to Councilman Valentes.
I say West Fest, open, eliminating both.
West Fest as is?
West Fest as is in February or the earlier time. No, not West Fest, I'm sorry. Seafood Festival in place of West Fest earlier and open to having both cut.
Okay. Councilwoman Samuels?
I like our Park and Rec Director, Mark's idea, where we could start off with West Fest, and then midway through Saturday, we go into Seafood Festival, because it goes from a country theme into, as Jimmy Buffett did with several others. We have eliminated West Fest in the past. I know it is we're in the Western communities, it is a Western theme. There were several years that we didn't have it. I know it is emotional, that a lot of people like it. It is much more attended than Seafood Festival. However, when we go back and we look and say is where the budget is, and if we cannot do a combination of the two, maybe this year we do Seafood Festival, and see what happens next year, and we can always switch it out again or add West Fest in additional. So I will go with the Seafood Festival for next year.
Okay. Well, that's three of us, but I will tell you, I'm really interested, and I think it's open to figuring out what we can do with West Fest, perhaps make it more affordable. So it sounds like Seafood Festival to replace West Fest. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Council, for the coming year anyway. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that correct? Okay, not hearing any nays. Okay, so there's your guidance on that.
Thank you very much.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right, so let's see if I know where we are now. Okay, so we get a chance to have another interesting conversation, I think. Regular agenda item number 2 is the discussion of section 20-54 of the Village Code regarding temporary non-commercial signs. Now, that may not sound very exciting, but I promise you it will be. So I'm going to turn to our attorney, I think, and ask her to kind of, either one of you all can start it off with the background and also some of the consideration that we have.
So I can start, unless you want to go, Manager Liggins.
Go ahead.
I can start with what your code currently says and how we got to where your code was, just so you understand what's being discussed as it relates to this agenda item. So your current sign code was changed in 2021 in response to Supreme Court case that significantly restricted what the village could regulate in terms of content of signage. So prior to that case, it was Reed versus Gilbert. Your code, your village code, specifically talked about political signage, and you were allowed in any zoning district on private property to have political signage for 30 days, and then there was an allocation on village-owned property to have political signage for 14 days prior to an election. There were sort of size restrictions, placement restrictions are kind of like they exist today in terms of where on village property, that staked out area that you could put signage. So the Reed case comes down and says we can no longer regulate content of signage. So in order to regulate the content of signage, you have to meet a much higher, what's called strict scrutiny in terms of demonstrating a compelling interest for those regulations. So the village code was amended to conform with that Supreme Court case. And as you see in your current code, there is no longer any reference to political signage, because again, that's content-based regulation. We're not allowed to do that. Instead, what was put on the books in 2021 is what is referred to as time, place, and manner restrictions. So there's still a differentiation in the code in terms of private versus public property. There was an allowance, there still is an allowance under your code to put signs. What we call them now are temporary signs that are non-commercial, and they are tied to specific events or defined definite events. So those are allowed both on private property for a duration of 30 days, and then on the staked out area on village property. There are date ranges on village-owned property. There are 3 sets of date ranges. Again, those were intended to be, implemented because these are not supposed to be tied to, let's say, an election or a specific event. They are allowing for people to put any signage that is tied to a defined event, temporary signage this is, during those select date ranges. There are also 30-day periods. They're currently set at February 28th to March 28th, July 28th to August 28th, and October 28th to November 28th. So the same 30-day period, it's just set in a date range because putting it on village property is a little bit different than private property, but the same duration. And there are the same size restrictions still exist in the code for both private and public property. So I just wanted to give you the context of what your current code says, why it was changed, and then just so you had that context for your discussion. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Madam Attorney, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, that was well, if the only history she didn't give is why do we even allow it on public property? And that was because one of our elected officials that could not put it on a significant number of parcels private property parcels out there, and wanted the ability to put it on the public property. So we changed the ordinance and allowed it in Village Hall property over by Folsom Road and over by Belvedere at the entrance to Counterpoint. They're the 3 areas that we allow it for that, and it was originally for just the 14-period day prior to an election. When we changed it to event-type signs, we went with the 30 days, 3 30-day periods.
Okay. So the reason we're talking about this right now is it was brought up last month, and then there was an email from another council member asking for us to address this. That's why we're addressing this right now. So I thought if either one or both of you all who raised the issue would like to talk a little bit about it.
Yep, and thank you very much. I did bring it up at the last council meeting. These dates were set several years ago. It is a 30-day, and there are actually more plots of land that the village owns. There's on Wildcat Way, there's over by Crestwood, not Crestwood, over
No,
Southern,
yeah.
but there's also over by Counterpoint.
Right.
So the point is I believe, I know it's written like this, I do think that we should reevaluate it every 5 years or so, just the dates. So I'm actually proposing that we move it from the 16th of February to the 16th of March, the 23rd of July to the 23rd of August, and the 10th of October to the 10th of November.
So let me then, I would like to get this fully out in the open and have a complete conversation before we talk about any specific changes at this point. So let me turn to the Vice Mayor, who also asked that this be addressed.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I asked that it be addressed because a couple of people that were running for office wanted to know if their signs could be put out for a longer period of time, because as we have it now, by the time they put their signs out, people have already either made a decision on who they're going to vote for, et cetera, or, they don't have the option to let more people know that they are running. And that's why I brought it up. I was trying to understand. You said the 10th of November?
Right, because they can't be tied, the dates cannot be tied to a specific event.
Right.
So I had asked for the 16th of February. We still have February, we still have the dates in the same months. I just had shifted the weeks. So the 16th of February to the 16th of March, the 23rd of July to the 23rd of August, the 10th of October to the 10th of November.
Thank you. That's why I asked for it. And thank you for clarifying that.
So one way to determine whether or not the council desires to move forward on doing an ordinance would be to look for a motion. But before I do that, I see Councilman Valentes would like to have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got an issue from, I guess, a fundamental standpoint. Number one, should the Village of Royal Palm Beach be getting in the business? Because keep in mind, these are any type of non-commercial signs. So number one, should the village be in the business of opening up its property to allow people to advertise on it? That's number one. That's always bugged me. But the second one is changing of the dates. The reason these dates were selected is because if you look at them, they are consistent. It's what, Mitty, the 28th to the 28th. They're all the same. They're not, and even that, I'm very, very, apprehensive about the fact that, okay, just so happens every one of these time periods coincides with an election cycle. So there's going to be an election on all of these times. So we're not directly regulating political speech, but it kind of looks like we are. If we start changing dates to say, okay, well, the date, this one will be this one, and this one will be that one, so they're not even consistent dates. At least we can rely on, well, no, we're not really doing this because the dates are the same every month, but then, no, I want to change it to different months and different times. That kind of looks like it's being directed towards specific content, and as Councilwoman Sharp said, her inquiry was specifically about political speech, so that's why I don't think it should be changed at all, and if it's going to be changed at all, I think we should eliminate it.
It was from someone.
Yeah, no, someone asked you that question, and you weren't around when it was passed, and that's my position.
All right. So, Councilwoman Rodewski.
I agree with Councilman Valentes. I think that there's no reason why we need to have signs on our village property. We can eliminate the headache right there.
Okay, well, let me weigh in a little bit on this. I've always been uncomfortable with doing something that was working around what seemed to be clear intention, something that gets closer to less specific about it, which is the 28th to the 28th, which we've had for, how many years have we had this? 5 years?
6.
Gee,
It's 2020.
Felt like longer than that, but okay.
I complained about it for 5 years, Jeff, and then we finally changed it after the 5 years I was complaining about it.
So just as an aside here.
So that's why it seems so.
This is the kind of healthy thinking that a council has when you have an attorney as a member of the council, and a reminder about First Amendment and Supreme Court rulings and things of that. We came up with something that was working, and that was the 28th to the 28th. My inclination is to not change it. And so if somebody cares to make a motion so we can close this one way or the other, I will entertain a motion.
I do have a comment, though.
Okay, go ahead.
So to Councilman Valentis's comment, so there's two options. Either we can change the dates or we leave them the same, actually three, then leave them the same, or just remove the item altogether. So we can also change it from the 10th of, let's say, February to the 23rd of March, and do the 10th of July to the 23rd of August, and the 10th of October to the 23rd of November. So those are some options. All the dates are all the same, they're consistent, and we can leave them that way if the council would like to use the property for that. We do not have billboards in Royal Palm Beach. We don't have a lot of signage. So, for the short amount of time that they're out there, it does get congested, but, it is a brief period of time that they're out there.
Okay. Anyone care to make a motion? I'm not hearing any motion, then I will.
I'll make a motion to change our dates of the duration of the temporary non-commercial signs associated with the defined event may be displayed only during the following periods of time in any calendar year. The 10th of February to the 23rd of March, the 10th of July to the 23rd of August, and the 10th of October to the 23rd of November.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay. 3 nays and 2 affirmative votes. We will then, that motion is defeated. I'm open to another
Okay,
motion if
so
one wishes to do that.
So the question is then, if there's a conversation to be had, does the council want to change the dates or just eliminate the item altogether?
So what's the sense at this point?
Might eliminate it.
Madam Vice Mayor?
I'd rather leave the dates as they are. I don't want to take away the opportunity for people to be able to put a sign if they want to.
Okay.
I don't like that.
Councilman Blandis?
Just on our campus.
To eliminate it as well.
And Councilwoman Samuels?
Change the dates originally proposed.
I'm sorry, say that again, I didn't hear you.
Well, since, if I would keep the dates then the same if we're not going to move them.
And so I would look at the screen here and say, was that your comment? Okay. Councilman Valentis?
And I guess this is a MIDI question. This isn't something necessarily we can do tonight, right? This is something we have to advertise and change the ordinance and those type of things. This is just, I guess, looking for direction. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for that. So this is about the direction to prepare a change, if any, to the ordinance, all right? And so I have 3 that say leave it as it is. And so I think that's the direction, unless I misread that. I think there are 3 of us who say leave it as it is, as opposed to eliminating it. Did I get that correctly?
Yes, that's it, leave it as it is.
Yes?
3 say leave it as it is. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And thanks for the correction on it. What we were looking for was direction, not a vote on whether or not the ordinance should read that way. Okay. So moving on to the last item, which is the Education Advisory Board appointments. There are 2 regular member appointments to be made tonight, one with term ending March the 2027 and the other ending March 2028. We normally turn to our council liaison, and that would be me on the Education Advisory Board for a recommendation as to appointments to these 2 vacancies that we currently have on the Education Advisory Board. With that in mind, my recommendation, since I can't make a motion, is to appoint Adatsy Suarez, who currently serves as an alternate to the regular seat with the term expiring March 2028, and to move and appoint Timothy Scarlett to a regular seat with the term expiring March 2027. If someone would make that motion, that would move us.
Mr. Mayor, I offer that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any opposed. That is approved. I thank you very much. We've got one more vacancy, by the way, just for people's general information. Please feel free. And before you all pack up and leave, let me ask for one final thing, and that is, I want to thank you all very much for the discussion tonight. I think it was very healthy. I think it moved in the right direction. Remember, this is part of the budget process. There wasn't any decision made tonight, but I think we moved in a good direction, and I want to encourage everybody, stay involved. Please, ask questions. Catch us in Publix, wherever. Have that conversation. I appreciate you all showing up tonight. Unless there's any further business to come before the council, this meeting is adjourned.